thank you everyone for coming. If Kathy is ready to say hello, and we appreciate everyone that has made the effort to come out tonight, especially from all over the county and from other counties. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to let Kathy introduce herself. Oh, I am Cassie Roth. I live here in Ottawa County, and yeah, we're going to get started.
And I'm Kathy Sharplaz, and we're representing Stock Mega-swine facility in Ottawa County. It's a pretty prosaic name, but that's what we came up with. And our team, okay, I got to get used to this. Our team has been doing a lot of research these last 6 or 7 weeks, doing a deep dive on everything from the swine life cycle to aquifers and groundwater to tax valuations and all kinds of stuff I didn't know much about before. It's been kind of a crash course. But we have compiled a lot of information, and we've put it together into this presentation because we're not really seeing this information elsewhere. Schwartz Farms of Minnesota, that is proposing to build a mega-swine facility here, has not been super forthcoming with information. The first article we saw about them in the newspaper was on June 12th, despite the fact that they started negotiations with some private parties back in November or December. So there's not been a lot of information, and we're offering this presentation as a public service to fill in some of the information gaps, and we hope that it will spark some discussion. There will be a question and answer period after the presentation. I just refer you to the rules over there. Please save all your questions for after the presentation. If you think of something, you can write it down, make a note of it, and hopefully we'll have time to get to it. But we're going to have this PowerPoint presentation that we've put together, and then we have a couple of speakers who have offered to share some more information, and then we will open up to questions and comments. So anyhow, welcome. I think we're all here for the same reason, which is that we care about this community. We care about our families, and we want a healthy, prosperous future for our children in Ottawa County. The differences between us come from what we think is the best way to secure that healthy, prosperous future. We have become convinced, after all the research we've done, that the proposed not the way to a healthy or prosperous future for Ottawa County. And we're going to show you in this presentation a little bit about the sheer enormity of the operation. It is truly a humongous one, the biggest such facility east of Phillipsburg, which means the entire eastern 2/3 of Kansas. We're going to talk about what that many hogs together in one place, concentrated, means for our water quality, which is our drinking water, and we're going to talk about some of the long-term costs and some of the risk assessment. Okay. Please save all comments and questions for the end, and the presentation, or at least most of the slides, will be available by PDF after the meeting. And if you leave your email address on the sign-in sheet, we'll, oh wait, that's not right. We'll refer you to our Facebook page afterwards, and you can private message and ask for a PDF if you would like a copy of the show for yourself. It's also being video recorded, and that will be online within the next couple days. So, overview. First of all, it's Schwartz Farms of Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. This would be their 3rd facility in Kansas. They opened one in Harrington in the fall of 2022, and one near Longford last year in 2024. So this would be their 3rd farrowing facility in the last 3 years. So it's been kind of a sudden move by Schwartz into Kansas. They have apparently a site manager for the region who is scouting still more locations. So Schwartz is expanding. And here's Minneapolis, And the site we're looking at is it's 5 miles north of Minneapolis. Next. Okay, it's in the far northeastern corner of Garfield Township. That's right here. Zoom in one more. Okay, so, okay, wait a minute, it's right here. Okay, it's the southern half of, okay, here's a section, here's the east quarter section, and it's the southern half of that. You can see that there is a drainage channel that cuts across the southeastern portion of that. That's a concern. There's all these other drainage channels, and here's the Solomon River, which is less than 2 miles away. Click. Okay, here's a view, a topographic view, and you can see how big these so-called hog barns are. They're nearly 1/4 of a mile long each. And these would be the sewage lagoons, the manure lagoons. And the reason for this distance is very interesting. That's a 1 mile radius. Unlike any other farm transaction, when somebody wants to put in one of these swine facilities, every landowner within a 1 mile radius has to be notified by the KDHE. Now, if I want to sell a quarter section of pasture to somebody, we arrange it privately, and we don't have to notify the neighbors, we don't have to notify the KDHE, we don't have to notify anybody except the Register of Deeds. So this is not an ordinary ag land transaction. Setting up a CAFO, they call it a farm, but if this was an ordinary farm, you wouldn't be needing to give notice, legal obligation to give notice to everybody within a 1 mile radius. Next. Okay, we're going to call this a CAFO. It's an official term. The EPA uses this, the KDHE uses this. It means concentrated animal feeding operation, and it includes not only swine operations, but big dairies, feedlots, those huge poultry outfits in Arkansas, turkeys, anything. When you've got a certain number of a certain type of animal confined and concentrated in one place, it's called a concentrated animal feeding operation. And there are different categories of sizes, and it goes by something called animal units. And what we're concerned about here is the swine, but when we talk about this CAFO that's proposed for Ottawa County, you'll hear people saying, well, it's only 9,000 animal units. Why are you guys saying 45,000 head swine? 45,000 individual pigs is what it will be. But each of those pigs, little piglets, only count as 0.1 animal unit. And a big old sow, 400 pounds, counts as 0.4 animal unit. So for comparison, mature beef steer would usually be about 1 animal unit. A mature dairy cow might be 1.4 animal units. So you can think of it as roughly an animal unit being about 1,000 pounds of animal. So you get down, there's some cute little things down here like ducks are 400ths of an animal unit. But it gives you it gives you a clue about how you will be dealing with the waste, because you've got 1,000 pounds of animal producing X amount of waste. So that's why we use that. So click. The facility that, the EPA defines, CAFOs are all different sizes, and they classify them small, medium, large. Large is 1,000 animal units or more. The KDHE in Kansas came up with an additional category which they call Mega-swine. That's the term they use, and that is 3,725 animal units. So the 9,000 animal unit facility that is being proposed for 5 miles north of here is 9,000 animal units. Look at that, it's 2.5 times the size of Mega-swine. It's humongous. Click. And that will be 10,000 sows, 4,300 gilts, which are female pigs that have not been bred yet, and 30,000 nursery piglets. This is at any one given time at the facility, because the gilts become sows, and then the sows get culled out and sent off to slaughter after a couple years. And the piglets, what they're projecting is about 5,000 new piglets being born a week, 5,000 being weaned a week, 5,000 being shipped out a week. So it adds up to 44,900. So here again, just zooming in a little closer, I want to get back to how big those buildings are. So you can see that, and you can see that, okay, well, a section, that's 1 mile. So these are nearly 1/4 of a mile long, but to give you an idea of how really long that is, we went out to Schwartz's facility at Harrington, which is called Flint Hills Port, which is almost identical in terms of size and the way it operates to the facility they want to build here. So we thought we'd take a look, and we couldn't go in, but we circled all around and found some interesting things. So first I want to give you an idea. We're going to show a little video clip. This will show a wide pan of one of those buildings. Okay, we start out, just beyond that berm is the manure lagoons. There's the grain feeders. Here starts the hog barn. And it just goes on and on and on and on. This is one building. Okay, that is one hog barn. Okay, that is, but they're good guys because they have solar panels, right? Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, so you need a building that long, and we would have 2 that long here, because each sow would have 2 litters a year. Each of those litters will have 13 to 14 piglets. So here's the piglets, here's the sow, times 10,000 every year. And I already covered that, each week. Okay, that many pigs means an awful lot of swine waste. And to talk about that, we need to talk about water, because our concern is how that stuff makes its way into our water. And there's 2 kinds of water that people use as water sources. Okay, down in Texas, where I came from, they have reservoirs all over the place, and the drinking water actually comes from those reservoirs. They purify the water out of these lakes, and that's the drinking water. But where we get our water is straight up out of the ground from wells. Click. And this shows the 3 wells in Minneapolis. So that's where we have pumps that pump the water up into the water tower, and then when you turn on your tap, gravity makes it flow out. It's a wonderful system, as long as that groundwater stays clean. And not only, I used Minneapolis as an example, but Tuscany, Bennington, Delphus, every place, and of course all the homes out in the country, everybody with private wells, it all comes from groundwater. We do not get our drinking water from surface water, except indirectly. And our whole area is filled with, you look at a map of Ottawa County, and we're on sensitive groundwater area. Now that's a designation by the U.S. Geological Survey. And so it's not just some touchy-feely designation. It's a legal designation by the U.S. Geological Survey. And it means areas where that are particularly prone for contaminants to be able to get to the groundwater. They're particularly vulnerable. And it's a function of several different factors, including the climate, the topography or the lay of the land, whether we're hilly or flat, the land use, whether you've got crops or grassy pastures or concrete buildings. The soil type, which we all know how wonderful the soil here is here in Kansas, and the depth down to the groundwater. How far down do you have to go to hit the water table? And it's shallower here than in a lot of places. We think 55 feet down to groundwater, that sounds like a lot, but there's other places in Kansas where you got to go a couple hundred feet down to groundwater. So this shows the designated sensitive groundwater areas in Kansas. And here's Ottawa County here. Next. And here's a blow up. This right here, the very point of the arrow, is where Schwartz Farms proposes to build this Mega-swine facility. So as you can see, it is very, very close to sensitive groundwater area. And our area sits on what's called an alluvial aquifer. Down in Texas, I grew, and with connections in the Panhandle, I always grew up hearing about the Ogallala Aquifer, the great Ogallala Aquifer. The Ogallala Aquifer is an enclosed aquifer. It's very deep down, and it gets almost no recharge from the surface. So once the water's pumped out of there, it's essentially gone. We have a very different situation. You can click. Okay, with an alluvial aquifer, okay, the usual way everywhere that water moves down through the ground, it can move down and then hit the water table, the groundwater. But with an alluvial aquifer, you've also got surface water in contact with the groundwater in a bunch of places. So if you dump something in the river, you think, oh, well, it's going to wash, go down the river, and, the people in Abilene downstream from here might have to worry about it, in Junction City. No, it turns out when you live on an alluvial aquifer, that surface water can intrude in the groundwater, and in fact, according to the Division of Water Resources for our district, which is part of the KDA, we have about the Dakota aquifer that we're on is about 40% recharged with surface water. So what goes down that river and into our lakes really matters for our drinking water, even though we're pumping our drinking water up from the ground. That groundwater can get contaminated by surface water very easily when you're on an alluvial aquifer and you've got these sensitive groundwater areas. So let's talk about wastewater. That's our concern here. And the big swine CAFOs, and this one in particular, tend to have these waste lagoon systems. So the waste gets pumped out from these big concrete pits under the slatted floors of the hog barn. Okay, so the hogs are on slatted floors. The waste goes down into I think it's a couple feet deep concrete pit, and it gets flushed every so often out into these processing lagoons. And there's two of them, and some decomposition, just like the sewage lagoons that you see along the interstate outside the rest areas. There's biological processes that happen that are supposed to break down most of it. And then once it's had a chance to break down a little, it goes into a very big storage lagoon. And where it goes from there is the proposal in Schwartz's permit application says that it will be exported out to certain fields nearby under contract. It would be piped out, and then it would be sprayed on the fields through the center pivots. So here's a better diagram of the site. Okay, here is, this part of this barn is the gilt development unit, and once they're ready to be bred and have piglets, they get moved into this, which is called the breeding and gestation barn. And when the sows are ready to give birth, they move them into this farrowing unit where they have the piglets. And then all the waste from both of these buildings gets pumped out to these two lagoons, and then these lagoons connect to the big lagoon, the big storage lagoon. And I call your attention to one other thing which I never noticed on here when I first saw these drawings, but this is an important thing. Can y'all see this little bank here with 10 compartments. Okay, there's for those that can't see it, there's a smaller building here that has 10 compartments in it. That is the mortality composting building. So if a piglet dies or a sow dies, anything, if they die, okay, you can't ship them off for slaughter. If they die, you don't want to bury them. They put them in the first bin here and cover them with carbonaceous material. I think the ratio is 4:1, volume-wise. So straw or something. And then they sit in there, and just like a compost pile, it heats up to get all these microbial processes going to break it down. And somebody comes in and turns, just like a compost pile, only there's 10 of them in sequence. So they start in bin 1, and then after a certain period of time, somebody turns that and transfers it to bin 2, bin 3, so on. And what's supposed to come out at the very end here is some actual compost that can be used. So I sure wouldn't want to have that job, and I sure feel for anybody that gets stuck with that job. I think that would be one of the worst jobs at the whole facility, but it's got to be done. Click. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how much volume those lagoons are, the two processing lagoons add up to 15.77 million gallons. Okay, so 1 million gallons, if you want to try to picture it, picture a cube that's 50 feet high and 50 feet long and 50 feet wide. Okay, that's 1 million gallons. Now imagine 15 of those. Okay, so that's what those lagoons will hold. The big storage lagoon will hold even more. If y'all are familiar with the famous water tower in York, Nebraska, that's 750,000 gallons. So the volume of that one is 20 million gallons, so imagine 26. This is, if I remember right, this is over a year's time. So 62 acre feet of waste, 20 million gallons. So in the course of a year, this is how much waste would be going through that lagoon. And the way that they deal with it is to pipe it out and spray it on some nearby fields. Now, to hold the waste in those lagoons, they use what they call a clay liner. So it's packed soil that has a high composition of clay in it that is to slow down the seepage of the waste down into the ground and contain it. And the berms are built up enough that hopefully to prevent any overflow. The problem is, one of the problems is the engineer for Schwartz has guaranteed to the KDHE that these liners, these lagoons, the berms, will be rated to withstand a 24-hour record rainfall event that statistically is likely every 25 years. So there's no provision made for what if we get record rainfall for more than 24 hours? What if it goes on for 3 days, 4, and you can see that it just goes sky high? So what happens if we get a year like, say, the summer of '93, where we've got, or some of the previous flood years? It doesn't account for that. It's just kind of, well, everything in life is a risk. We'll talk about that later. And here is the 25-year, the average recurrence interval of that record flooding event would be every 25 years. But unless Schwartz has some private deal with God that I don't know about, there's no guarantee. We wouldn't have a 500-year event. It's a gamble. It's like playing the stock market. It's just a gamble. So I don't think we can predict the future. So we're playing with probabilities here, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, according to, and I forgot to say this earlier, but all these numbers we're giving you, they come from Schwartz's permit application to the KDHE. This is their numbers. All we've done is change some units. We've converted acre feet to cubic feet to gallons, per year to per day. We've done stuff like that. But the original numbers, they all come out, and that permit application is available online. And if you go to our Facebook page, you'll find links to it. But it's public information, and all we did was take Schwartz's own numbers and put them in presentable form. So the liners are allowed to seep, and they do tests to show this, 1/10 of an inch per day. And the liners are 12 inches thick. It's about 3 feet per year, do the math. And from the bottom of the underside of the liner down to the water table is 35 feet. Now, we know, and everybody who lives in the country and has a septic system, as I do, knows that stuff breaks down as it goes through the soil. Otherwise, I couldn't have a septic field outside my home and have a well that has wonderful, clean, pure drinking water. Things break down in the soil. And they'll tell you that the difference is a septic system for a household or even a highway rest area is really, really different from 45,000 pigs in one place. There's the difference, and it's a vast difference in what the soil can handle before things get down to groundwater. Okay, so here's just another crunch, and we just took this page straight out of the permit application. The total waste input volume, 2.5 million cubic feet. These are they're such big numbers, it's hard to even conceive of them. And we're concerned about that because of some of the stuff that can be in that waste, including these pathogens. And except for Listeria and Giardia, all of these pathogens are more of a problem in swine than in cattle. The additional problem is that because swine have digestive systems and immune systems that are much more similar to humans than what cows or horses have, dairy cows, whatever, pigs are more similar, so the viruses that they carry are more similar to the viruses and bacteria that humans can get infected with. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. We need to go to the virus slide. These are the bacteria and protozoa that can be a problem. But there's also viruses, rotavirus, norovirus, hepatitis E, and rotavirus and hep E, swine are a natural reservoir for. Okay, so that means that they're very easily, they carry these viruses. And rotavirus and norovirus, we have found that there's actually genetic mixing between human strains and swine strains. So you can end up, that's how we ended up with the E. coli problem years ago. We all carry E. coli in our stomachs. It's harmless most of the time, but what happened in feedlot cattle was that bacteria combined with something carrying the Shigella toxin genes. And now you have this very, very dangerous bacterium, the E. coli that you hear about people dying from. So the same thing could happen with swine. Anytime you get genetic mixing like that, you're walking into dangerous territory. And there has been also some evidence, we need more research, but some research suggests that viruses may last longer in swine manure than bacteria do. So that's a problem when you're putting that stuff into the environment. The other thing we all know about is nitrates. And that's a problem anytime you've got a bunch of animals concentrated in one place. And they can lead to blue baby syndrome, where the baby can't get enough oxygen to breathe and they start turning blue because the nitrates mess with their hemoglobin. You can get birth defects, particularly neural tube defects like spina bifida, and cancer in adults. All of these things are dangers with nitrates, and this is well documented. You don't even have to do much searching on the internet to find the statistics on nitrates, and specifically nitrates in drinking water and what they do to human health. So here's just a chart showing the breakdown of some of those cancers. 1% bladder, 4% kidney, 5% ovarian, 8% thyroid, and 82% colorectal. And I noticed that colorectal cancers have really been on the rise these last few years. And You know, the thing with cancer, you can't attribute one particular case of cancer that somebody gets to one particular cause, but you can look at the statistics. And in places like Iowa and North Carolina, where these swine CAFOs have been established for decades, the rates of these cancers are very high. I mean, you just look at the statistics over wide, big numbers of people and you find this. So, again, 18 million gallons a year of potentially toxic stuff. And I mentioned that there were fields that it was going to be spread on. These are the fields. There's 8 fields that have an agreement with Schwartz right now to spread the waste. Now, what happens if the farmer's field is saturated, or the nitrate level in his soil, he tests it and it's too high and he can't take any more of the waste? But Schwartz, which is right here, Schwartz gives him a call and he is contractually bound to dewater that lagoon. He has to come and take the waste out when they tell him to come and take it. So what is he going to do? Well, he might try and talk some other farmer into taking some of it. But we don't know where those fields would be. We know where these 8 that are in the contract are. We don't know, and he's not required to tell, because the agreement says that once the waste leaves the Schwartz facility, they're no longer accountable for it. And the farmer himself is not accountable for it, in the sense that all we can find in that permit application, and believe me, we have had engineers go through that, we've had lawyers go through that, we've had people who know what they're talking about go through that permit agreement, and none of us has been able to find anything in that agreement that requires any kind of accountability for what happens to that waste once it leaves that manure lagoon. Now, there are recommendations. We expect the farmer to apply it, quote, agronomically. We expect the farmer to do this, but there's absolutely no mechanism for accountability. So basically, we're just trusting that we're trusting. And I don't think that's good enough. I think we need to have accountability. And it's a special concern because a couple of these export fields are in the designated sensitive groundwater areas, meaning whatever is sprayed on that field has an easier path down to groundwater than in some other areas. And some of, I mean, we don't know what other export fields might be used, but there might be some that are even closer to the river than these are. And what happens as you get closer to the river, if you look at the wells, you know, there's lots of wells out there. You look at the wells and you can find the data. It's available from the Division of Water Resources. How far down did they have to drill to hit water? And as you go to the river, the wells are shallower and shallower. There's less and less distance down to groundwater. And, of course, supposing waste is applied and you get a really big rain very soon afterwards, all that runoff can end up at the river. So, I mentioned that we went out and looked at the very similar facility in Morris County. The biggest difference is instead of 2 barns, Schwartz took over a previous existing hog farm that had these, they remodeled these 2 buildings, and then Schwartz, the breeding and gestation barn, that's a brand new building. But it's the same number of sows, it's the same kind of operation, a farrowing operation, and basically this is their gilt development unit and this is their farrowing barn. So it's the same general layout, it's just instead of 1 long building, it's 2 separate buildings. There's the manure lagoons, and I want you to look at that because the state of Kansas requires that the very furthermost edge of the manure lagoon, the water in that lagoon, needs to be 500 feet or more away from the nearest creek. And we went out there, and I'm telling you, it was a very scant 500 feet. I mean, they really pushed it up. And this, we can zoom in one more. Okay, so here's the berms around the manure lagoons. They got that clay liner, right? And then what we saw was an additional berm, this green rectangle that was built, and we think they probably built that there because they knew how close to the creek they were, and they wanted an additional barrier between the manure lagoons and the creek. But this is really close to the creek. And the only way we discovered this whole thing was because we were driving on the road south of the facility, and we found ourselves on a bridge. I mean, it wasn't just a low water crossing, it was a bridge, a constructed bridge. And we got out of the car and we looked down at this creek and said, oh my goodness, we're just barely past the boundary of that swine facility. And we walked back, we walked out on the road, it was a hot day, we walked back and saw that, oh my gosh, this is what we saw there. We saw this berm, and I said, that can't be the manure lagoon, because I read in the permit application, and all I've learned about berms, the berm has to be kept free of vegetation because the roots could compromise the integrity of the berm. So the clay liner berm is somewhere beyond that, and this is the secondary berm. But you can see that that secondary berm is right up against the line of trees that marks the creek. And we actually took video so we could show people that this isn't just a drainage ditch, it isn't just a line of trees, it really is a creek. And here's what we saw from the bridge. That's rippling water there. I hope you can see it. You want to run it one more time, Cassie, just in case anybody? And we just zoom in. We took all these videos and photos because we couldn't believe our own eyes. We're like, this can't be. You can't back a manure lagoon, millions of gallons of swine waste right up to a creek. Who would do that? And I'm still asking, who would do that? What kind of company would do that? And do you trust with your future a company that would do such an insane, ridiculous, irresponsible thing? Sorry for my anger, but I don't see any excuse for that. I really don't. And we saw it with our own eyes. You can ask Louise Corman. My jaw literally dropped. And Louise had the great idea of, well, maybe that's not what we're looking at. Let's check it out. And she got out her phone. We did the satellite maps, or Google Maps, and there's the satellite view, and sure enough, it really was the manure lagoons. I mean, we knew it pretty well had to be just because of where the barns were situated, but the satellite view proved it for sure. So another thing that comes up a lot in discussions about the proposed Mega-swine, everybody's concerned about how much water it will use. So we have to tell you right up front, the KDHE, which is what would grant the permit, they do not deal with that. All they deal with is water quality. So anything related to the wastewater, the groundwater, they deal with that. But it is the Kansas Department of Agriculture, KDA, that grants well permits. So they decide who gets a well permit and how much water they get to pump. So the permits come from KDA, and that would be for the wells. So the water supply, think of it as this is water input, the water coming up from the ground. This is water output, the water that our groundwater. So in the permit application that Schwartz submitted to KDHE, they said that, and they have to tell, even though KDA deals with the well permits, the company has to tell KDHE how much water will we be using in a year, and we just divided that through by 365, and it ends up being 47,000 gallons a day, and that's been confirmed. I talked to water people in the Division of Water Resources, and they confirmed that. But Schwartz has a permit from the KDA for 103,000 gallons of water a day. The way this works, and I think farmers who use center pivots know how this works, you try to get a permit for more than you think you'll actually need because you want to cover yourself for disasters. For example, swine facilities, say there's no air conditioning in those buildings. They use a swamp cooler, they call it cool cell banks, but it's basically a swamp cooler that uses water to cool. You know, air flows over it, you get cool air circulating, you got fans that exhaust it out, you get a current going, and that's what they use to cool the inside of these hog barns. And you have misters to cool them off. You can hose them down if it's really, really hot. Well, if you have a really bad heat wave, all those animals are going to need to drink more water, and you're also going to use more water cooling them. Potentially you have some incident that happens where you need to use more water to clean or something. So you want to have a permit for more water than you hope to need. And this figure, we think, is a very optimistic lowball estimate. We think that the actual usage will be more. And this is just to show they won't be using this. You know, I hope, they hope, everybody hopes they don't have to use this much. But if they did, they're permitted for 103,000 a day. And just to bring back the York Water Tower and show you how much water that is, it'd be 50 York Water Towers that they would use in a year if they used all the water that they're permitted for, which is very unlikely. But that's theoretically what they could use. Okay, another thing that comes up in a lot of talks around town is air quality. So that's a concern for several reasons. But you need to know that CAFOs are exempt from air quality emissions regulations from both the EPA at the federal level and the KDHE at the state level. And most people don't know this, but all that KDHE usually does is implement directives from the EPA. Sometimes states can do more, like Kansas invented this Mega-swine category that the EPA didn't have. And the other thing we learned is that KDHE will only do what they have a statutory mandate to do from the legislature. The legislature makes the laws or statutes. KDHE writes the regulations. So any big changes in the way we do things, they have to come from the legislature, but that's a more long-term question. We're just talking about stopping this swine facility from coming. Pig barns produce 6 times more ammonia than similar-sized dairy barns. I don't know if y'all been down to any of those corporate dairies in southwest Kansas, but they're pretty smelly. But there's other gases. There's ammonia, there's hydrogen sulfide, and it's, you know, we all know how stinky that is, anything with sulfide in it. It's very toxic, and unfortunately, people have died. Workers at these places have there have been accidents, and they've died from inhalation of hydrogen sulfide. Very, very bad. And of course, ammonia, chronic exposure to ammonia causes respiratory problems. And P-cresol is, that's a compound that comes out of the gut of both pigs and humans, and it is toxic, and it smells. So one thing I just have to say, the air, it can be a problem in several ways. You have wind blowing over the manure lagoons. My bigger concern is actually the export fields, the fields where the waste is being applied via center pivot, because, I mean, sometimes we have days where the wind isn't blowing much, but usually it is, and so you get drift. I mean, you see that with center pivot spraying water. I mean, a lot of water gets lost because it blows and it drifts. So just think about hog waste blowing and drifting. And yeah. Oh, and one other thing, I just have to say, I thought the timing was interesting because I walked out this morning and oh, what a relief from the heat. The wind was blowing from the north. Oh, blessed cool wind. And I think of all the days in the spring and the fall and especially in the summer when we get some relief because the wind comes out of the north and we don't have that hot south wind. Okay, what is life going to be like here? Just asking. I live far enough out of town, I probably don't have to worry about, but anybody that lives here in Minneapolis might have to worry about. What happens when that beautiful north wind comes with a stink? You know, right now we get that north wind, we want to sit out on the front lawns, enjoy some time outside. Maybe not so much if it's stinky. And the odor can transfer for miles depending on the day, depending on the wind. Costs. Something to consider, road maintenance, because more semis going through, delivering feed, shipping out piglets, shipping in gilts, healthcare, some of the health problems I mentioned earlier, and it is documented that the poor people who work in these places do have a very high rate of health problems. I know that the companies try to protect them from some of that, but it's the nature of the job, and you can't completely eliminate the potential harms from that. Education. Property values is interesting, and property taxes, because one of the things that's being used to argue for having this facility is, well, it'll increase our tax base. But that's not accounting. For one thing, you need to really crunch some numbers and see how much of an increase it actually is, because it's not as much as Schwartz would lead you to believe. There's been some wild numbers being thrown around out there. So look into that for yourself. The property values, there have been studies showing that property values around one of these swine CAFOs can decrease out to a radius of 7 miles. So that's a problem. It kind of overlaps with how far the smell can go, which is about 5 or 6 miles. So I'm not surprised to hear that if you're going to have a problem every time the wind blows from a certain direction, the value of who's going to want your property. So the resale value of your house, I mean, that could be a problem. And then the cleanup costs. There is, by law, they're required in the permit application to have a facility closure plan. But there's some blanks in there. There's some stuff that's not accounted for, and we could get stuck having to pay for that. And in closure plan, look it up, here's what it says. The hog buildings will be depopulated and left intact. Okay, so you'd clear all the pigs out, you'd empty the lagoons, and then you're left with this eyesore because it's supposed to be left intact. And I want to show you what that looks like, because I went up to around Longford looking for the Schwartz facility, which I never found, because I dare you to get on your map app and look up Henry Port, Longford, Kansas. And what you will get is the 2 abandoned Henry Port facilities that I went on a wild goose chase and found. You will not find the current Schwartz facility. If somebody can, I'd like to know your trick, because I tried several different search engines, a couple different map apps, and I couldn't find it. And the only way my friend Louise and I found the address of the Harrington facility is we found an old news article that said what road it was on, but no number, and we knew from the folks in Harrington it was 4 miles east of town. So we drove 4 miles east of town, we turned on that road, and we just drove until we found it. And when we saw the sign in front of it, it had the number on it. And I also was kind of amused that on the official sign in front of the facility, not only did it have the address, which I'd been looking all over the internet for and not been able to find, it also spelled the town of Harrington wrong. And I know I'm a professional proofreader, spelling bugs me, but really? You say that you're all about helping this local community. Oh, you're going to be so good for the community. And you can't even spell their name right. And after 2.5 years there, a company with millions and millions of dollars in assets can't spend $200 to put up a new sign with the spelling right. I don't know, I just think it says something. It's not something you'd ever use in a lawsuit, but I mean, it just tells you something about the difference between what they say they're all about. You know, we're just coming here out of the goodness of our hearts to benefit your community. No, I'm not buying that. So let's talk about risk, because the big difference between the two sides on this proposal is how we think about risk. Now, we all every day, next, life is full of risk. We deal with it every day. Every day we evaluate whether or not we're going to take a certain risk. Okay, I know that when I get behind the wheel of my car, I risk being in a car accident. But I do it anyway because there's some place I need to go, and I figure the risk of the car accident is low and is outweighed by my need to get such and such a place. We do this all day, every day. We all do this. Life is about risk assessment. So risk is always a cost versus benefit analysis. And there's two types of costs and two types of benefits. You can have public costs and private costs, public benefits and private benefits. Next. So the big question is, whose cost and whose benefit? Okay, so you can have private cost and private benefit. I decide to buy a new car or to add a deck onto the back of my house. Private cost, private benefit. My husband and I decide to donate money to building the beautiful current Minneapolis Public Library or putting a roof over the arena at the fairgrounds. Or people, now my husband and I weren't in on this, but there were other people that donated money for that beautiful walking trail at the park. And their names are on, on a sign there. Private cost, they funded it out of their own money. Public benefit, we all benefit from those things. And then there's public cost and public benefit. So we pay taxes to the county, which keeps up the roads and bridges, provides EMS services, the schools, public cost, public, we all pay for it, we all benefit from it. And here's the problem area though, public cost for private benefit. We pay tax money that gets used to benefit a private industry, or we give tax breaks and subsidies to a private business, or, as much of a concern as the money, the costs to our health and our environment that we may be forced to carry the burden of for somebody else's private benefit, for some stockholder somewhere. And that's a problem area. Another way to think about costs is public and private versus short-term and long-term. So private short-term, that'd be like buying that new, cars sometimes take a while to pay off. I don't know. Maybe I buy a magazine I want or something. Private short-term cost. Private long-term cost, raising a child to adulthood. Worth every last cent and every last tear. Public short-term might be fixing the leak at the swimming pool. Public long-term cost might be President Eisenhower deciding to build the interstate highway system. And that's long-term, and we all benefit from it, but it is a public cost, public long-term cost. Next. Now, here's what my dad, who was a very successful man, taught me many years ago. Risk is the probability of an event occurring versus the consequences if it happens. And there can be mild consequences where the damage is limited, temporary, reversible, and fixing it is easy, quick, and inexpensive. Or severe consequences where the damage is widespread, it affects a lot of people, it's extreme, it's permanent, remediation is difficult or even impossible and very, very costly. And my dad and I used to have this argument about nuclear power because I thought that the consequences, if there was an accident, were just too severe to ever take the risk. But he put the emphasis on the probability of that is so low that it's worth the risk to have that form of energy. Now I'm kind of agnostic on that matter, but back then we used to have a lot of arguments, and I focused on the severe consequences, and he focused on the low probability. So this is how we get into differences of opinions on these things. We all evaluate those risks and consequences differently. Okay, low probability, mild consequences. Okay, there's a low probability that my stove will break down completely this year. Mild consequences. I either hire somebody to fix it or I have to buy a new one. That's fairly mild consequences. High probability, mild consequences. I live on a country road. The probability is very high I'll have a flat tire within the next 3 months. Mild consequences. I put on the spare, I bring it into town, they repair it. High probability, severe consequence. There is a high probability that a devastating hurricane will hit the Gulf or the Atlantic coast sometime in the next 5 months. Pretty high probability, and it will have very severe consequences. People will lose their homes, a lot of property will be damaged, and maybe even, God forbid, people can die. So that's one way to think about risk. And finally, we need to talk about the principle of informed consent. This came out after World War II, after the Nuremberg trials, when the war criminals were put on trial, and those war criminals included doctors who performed experiments on human beings, unwilling human beings, without their consent. And so the Nuremberg principles, agreed on by, I think, practically every nation on earth after World War II, included the ethical rule of informed consent. So there's two pieces to that. Informed, that means whoever's taking the risk has the right to full, complete, truthful information. Consent, whoever would suffer the potential harm has the right to make the decision as to whether they want to take that risk. So we feel that something as serious as our groundwater and our quality of life and the sustainability of our community is such an important thing that to put it at risk, we need all the information about it, and we have the right to make the decision. Nobody has the right to force this on us. Schwartz is not coming down here holding a gun to our heads. We are sovereign individuals, we're a sovereign community, and we can say no to this. And Cassie, would you? Well, okay, we'll do one thing. So that leads us to what are the next steps that we can take. And first of all, coming up in 9 days is KDHE's public hearing, and I have to preface this by saying this hearing is only happening because my partner here, Cassie Roth, and several other people circulated a petition back in May. Made it in just under the deadline. They didn't even know about this deadline until the last minute. They circulated a petition to the KDHE that simply said, we have concerns about this, we need more time to evaluate this. Because like I said, there wasn't much public information at that point. KDHE responded to that by granting us a hearing, and they set the hearing for July 9th. So this is our chance to give our input to this state agency. What are our concerns about this facility? Why we do not want them to grant a permit to Schwartz Farms in Ottawa County. And that hearing will be at 6 p.m. in the Minneapolis gym. Might be moved to the auditorium depending on if the air conditioner gets fixed. It'll probably be in the gym. So there are going to be officials from Topeka coming to Minneapolis. This is an official proceeding, unlike this, which is an informal, meeting. This is an official hearing, but the more people come, the better. I mean, it's open to the public, and they've guaranteed anyone who wants to comment will get the microphone. If your 9-year-old son or daughter wants to come and comment, they can. There's no restrictions. You don't have to be a registered voter even. You can just come. And they said if there are a lot of people, they do reserve the right to limit people to 3 minutes. So you might want to think about that when you prepare for this. And there is, on the literature table, there's a sheet here that says the permit number, public comment and public hearing, and the date. And it tells you how these hearings run and what to expect. So you'll be asked to sign in at the door and to indicate whether or not you want to turn at the microphone. You can change your mind if you want. You can say, I want to turn at the microphone, and then when it's your turn, decide that no, I don't want to speak after all. And by the same token, even if you don't sign on this, you'll be able to raise your hand at the hearing and say, oh, I changed my mind, I want to comment after all. The other thing you can do, and this is on the literature table, is we printed this up. These are our group. This is our major concerns about the proposed facility. And if you agree with those and would like KDHE to know, to count you in among those who agree with this, at the bottom you can sign your name and put your address, put your phone number if you want. All that KDHE wants is your name and your signature and what town you live in, I think. I don't think they require the street address. And then there's also space for you to write your own comment. And it says, I personally want KDHE to take the above stated actions and not permit the Mega-swine facility because, and you can give your own reasons. And even though KDHE doesn't regulate air quality, if your major concern is air quality, by all means, write that in there. They need to know that that is something that people are concerned about. And what they will do is there's a deadline on these comments, and there's 2 ways to turn them in. To make it easy for you, you can turn it in to one of us at the door, and we will electronically scan these into an email that will be sent to their, and they did this with the petition, so we know it works. It goes to the head guy at the livestock waste management section. Super nice guy. I've talked to him on the phone many times, and a lot of what I know about this was him giving me an education over the phone. So he knows what he's talking about. He cares about communities, and these will be scanned in and sent to him. And then we'll also send a hard copy by certified mail of all these. So we just, figure both of them are, kind of cover our bases. The other thing you can do, maybe you want to take this home and think about it. Take it home, and up at the top, in that top left corner, it gives this email address, kdhe.feedlots@kansas.gov. You can scan it into your own computer, into an email, send it as an attachment, and send it to that address. And so there's several ways to do this. Or, last resort, you could bring it with you to the hearing and submit it then. Because there's a deadline for public comments. And it's 30 minutes after the end of the public hearing. They will take no more public comments from people about this facility after that moment. So you can bring it with you and hand it to them when you come in at the hearing. Tips for the hearing, I think that's it. We hope you all will come. Here is, if you want to take out your phones and get this QR code, this takes you to our page on Facebook. Well, we will be giving updates. We'll have, we're going to post all this stuff on the page, so if you lose your copy of the comment sheet, we'll have that up there. We'll have the email address. We'll have all the information that you need for this public comment period, getting ready for the hearing. And I really hope as many of you as possible will make an effort to be at that hearing. It's unfortunate that they scheduled it for a Wednesday night, because I know that's church night for a lot of people, but that was what they gave us and it couldn't be changed. So there's for updates. And then finally, I'm going to hand it over to Cassie.
So this is something that Craig Voland, maybe some of you know him, passed on to me. We had a bunch of emails back and forth, and I just happened to grab this one. And it's the Kansas statute that says our county commissioners in the state of Kansas can get a resolution and they can deny this facility. So anyone I talk to, my nephew who does work for the EPA, he said, have you talked to your county commissioners? And I hadn't. He said, because everyone I asked, I said, what can we do to stop this? And everyone said, it's your county commissioners. That's where you can get it stopped. So I plead with everyone, please call our county commissioners and say, I don't want this. Because Kathy, thank you for your beautiful presentation that showed us how enormous this facility is going to be, how dangerous it's going to be to our beautiful aquifer that we have, that the water tastes great right out of the well. And we don't want this. It's bad for our community. It is bad economically. There are studies that from the University of Missouri showing they are terrible economically on rural communities, that it's not good, guys. So there is an actual statute. Our county commissioners can deny this, so please call them and ask them to do so. And there is the contact information. And that is all we... Excuse me?
And that will be up at our Facebook page as well, the contact information. Or you could just go to the county website, and I think it's down today. I think it suffered in the storm. But normally you can just go to the Ottawa County website and click on the commissioners, and it'll give their contact information.
I talked to a commissioner today from Rooks County, where Smithfield, if any of you know who Smithfield is, they tried to do a facility, not this big, but a facility in Stockton, Plainsville, right around Plainsville, I think, right around in there. And he walked me through the procedure. He said he was I don't know. Anyway, he was a county commissioner. His daughter is the county attorney. And he said the way it works is they had multiple phone calls, multiple letters, and in their tiny little county, just like ours is tiny, 5,000 people, 50 people showed up at a commissioner meeting saying, we don't want this. So they went to the county attorney to have a resolution drawn up, and then they vote on it. So that's how it works. We need to ask our county attorneys county commissioners to do that. That situation turned out where Smithfield pulled out because they saw how much the county didn't want it, and they didn't want to be in an environment where they weren't wanted. So maybe that'll happen here. But thank you, Kathy. That was a beautiful presentation. That was awesome. Yes.
Shall I give it to Leland?
And now we have some people that have offered to say a little bit in the community, and anybody else who has something they want to say, we'll just pass the microphones around. First up, Leland Johnson.
Can I come up here?
Yeah.
She's in charge of the slides.
The one that shows the 1 mile.
Yes, yeah, I can go back to that.
My name is Leland Johnson. We'll have a slide for you here in just a second. When Cassie asked me to say a few words, she said, 2 or 3 minutes. I said, it's pretty dangerous to give an auctioneer a microphone and say you've only got 2 minutes. So I'm not too sure. Okay, just because she handed this to me because I guess I have some interest in this facility. This is my house right here. This is Cassie's house. So both of us have pretty much an investment in this facility, this potential facility that's going in, and so that is why. Now then, back several months ago, I did receive a call from Tim Schwartz. So I think I have an advantage on most of you here. I have sat down with him and spoke face to face. Anybody else visited with Tim Schwartz? We've got 1 or 2. Okay, nice guy. absolutely a nice guy. I see no vindictiveness or he's not an ogre. He's a nice guy. He's a businessman. He's thinking of it from a business. And the problem is the big corporation is a big corporation, and quite frankly, the little guy doesn't matter. So that's kind of my take on that. I did write a editorial or a letter to the editor and just expressed some things. Did you have a chance to, anybody see the letter to the editor? A few did. And I just kind of poured out where I'm at. And I sat down with Tim Schwartz and just laid it out. And the few things that we visited about were in the letter to the editor. And I expressed the things as far as water quality. I expressed the things of the environmental, the smell, and the things like that. And also acknowledged the decrease in value of property. And that concerns me quite a bit, because a facility going in of that nature does affect the value of property. I spent time as a real estate appraiser. That's part of it. It's called external depreciation. You can look it up and see what it is. But it basically says that that's the value of your property when an external or an outside force comes in to your existence. I've been in this location. My wife and I bought that while I was in Vietnam. This property, we put a house on there and we made a living. We poured our life into that. So that's kind of, like I said, I'm deeply invested in this situation. I don't know. Now you listen to one side, it will be a benefit. There's not going to be the concerns that we've expressed here today. And you hear the other side is that there are definitely some concerns and that there will be some things that are affected. So I won't go into a lot of more detail. Cassie just wanted me to visit with you a little bit, but I did want you to see the reason that I wrote the letter to the editor, the reason that I'm visiting here with you today is that you can see I'm pretty close to that situation, and I will be affected by that in one way or another. When I expressed these to Tim Schwartz, and I asked him basically the same three questions that have come up in all these discussions, and that is the water quality. And the one thing that really I was very specific about, and I said, why did you choose to come to Ottawa County, Kansas to build a facility here? And his comment was, to me, we're looking for clean ground.
Yes, all the hog farms in the United States, there's only one clean hog farm. That is in Salt Lake City.
Okay, that was his comment to me. I'm just telling you, I'm not up here to, cause anything. I'm just telling you exactly what our conversation was. He and his entourage, actually his HR person, and also the person that would, I think was in charge of feed. They came, we went out to my shop, sat down there, had a good conversation. They were very, very pleasant. Like I say, they're pleasing people to talk to. They have a great attitude about things. But I did think that comment was interesting. I asked him basically the same three questions that we're dealing with here: was water, environment, and a value of property. And his comment was, we want to be good neighbors. That was it. So I just wanted to convey to you, as I said, there are very few in here that have actually spoken with them. And that's, I would encourage you. I hope you get a chance. I think they would, well, I've said too much already. But I just want to let you know that I am pretty deeply invested in this facility.
We have another gentleman who has agreed to say a few words.
I didn't get a chance to write anything down, Kathy. Close? Okay. I do think there are a few questions we need to ask. I'm CJ Johns. I'm assuming most people know me, some don't. I guess for me, we've seen all the negatives to come to an actual decision of any educated decision on this. I haven't really seen anything other than Facebook comments for positives. I haven't seen how much tax this is going to bring us. I've heard 20 to 30 jobs. I assume they're fairly entry-level jobs. Is that really what we need in our county? I mean, I think those are questions to ask. And I would really like to see some hard facts from the other side, and I really haven't. That's about all I got.
I'm Tom Corman. I can hardly sit back there because there's one super important thing that I think that all these great things that Kathy said are absolutely true and things that we need to think about. But one of the things that's going on right now is the town that about half of the people that live in Minneapolis work in is in a boom, economic boom. Salina has so many jobs. The only thing that's holding Salina back from other companies coming in there is they don't have enough workers. And when those companies, my brother-in-law gave me a whole list of all the companies that are in the deal of expanding right now in Salina. It is literally a boom town, and Minneapolis will benefit tremendously from that because they don't have enough housing in Salina. They're building it as fast as they can. But the people that want to live in a nice little town with a good school, they're going to be looking at all the towns around Salina and deciding which one they're going to buy property in, where they want to live. And with the boom that's going on right now, it is predicted by the people that run Salina that there are 1,500 more jobs coming in the next 5 years to Salina. And so think about yourself. If you were one of those people that was going to move to Salina and you're looking for a place to live, and you look around at Lindsborg, Solomon, Abilene, Minneapolis, Ellsworth, and the first thing you find out about Minneapolis is that, oh yeah, there's a Mega-swine production 5 miles north of the town. We pass up this golden opportunity that Minneapolis has of benefiting from this boom that's going on in Salina just because we let a huge, massive hog farm go in there. Nobody wants to live next to 45,000 pigs. I've worked on a pig farm when I was a kid. It is the worst possible work I've ever done in my life, and I've done some nasty stuff, including being a mason for all those years. But we're going to blow a great opportunity that this community has, and we got a nice little town that will attract some decent people, that will put kids in our schools. And if we let this thing go in, we need to hit up those county commissioners. We need to make it so they're so sick of answering their phone, they can't take it. And this is one of the things I want you to tell them, that you're going to pass up a golden opportunity for Minneapolis to continue to grow, get a little bigger, get more kids into our school. And don't let this take place take the actions that you got to do. We cannot let this wreck our town, which I think it will. And the history of pork production is always, they come in and they rape you. They basically make as much money as they can. The pigs reproduce so fast that the price of pork goes down. They go broke. The people that run the companies make a fortune off of it. Everybody else is left without a job and abandoned buildings to try to fix up. That's been the record through my whole lifetime. Go to North Carolina, go to Iowa, where they're having serious water problems all over that state. Go to any of the states that have had these mega pork producers, and there's empty buildings and ruined environment everywhere they've been. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to put in a word here from my sister, Cheryl, who couldn't be here. She lives in Texas, but she did live up here for a while. And one thing she said when this whole issue came up with was the thing I always loved about Minneapolis was that kids would grow up and come back here. How many places does that happen? And I think we need to ask ourselves, it's been argued that, well, this will help keep our economy afloat so that our kids can come back here. But what if our kids don't want to come back here? And we've talked to some young people that said, no, we're not moving there if that swine facility goes in. You know, we'll find someplace else. And it just, like what Tom was saying, there's some other nice little towns here. And Ottawa County, how many counties in the United States don't have a single stoplight? Now, see, we take that for granted. We take that for granted. But that's a precious, precious thing. And our Ottawa County Fair, there's people that come all the way up from Salina and Wichita to go to our county fair because it's a good old-fashioned country county fair. This place is special. So let's not do anything. The problem with this swine thing, I saw one comment about somebody was raising concerns about air quality and water quality and stuff, and the response was, well, we'll just have to cross our fingers. I don't think we do have to cross our fingers. I think we can just say no, because if it does come in, we can't change our mind later and make them leave. We're just stuck. And we have another speaker here. Oh.
My name is Rebecca Bell, but I'm a corpsman. And my husband and I recently built a home on my parents' home place. For full disclosure, we're probably in the, when the wind blows, we'll smell it. That's where it kind of our location. And I am one of the kids that did just recently come back. If we had known this was a potential reality, we wouldn't have. Absolutely not. We just moved from the Wichita area in Andover and had a very nice life there. Not as nice as country life. And I grew up, we raised some pigs for 4-H. We weren't pig farmers. But I don't feel like you need to be a pig farmer to understand that thousands of pigs, or have any of these stats, to understand that thousands of pigs inside a building anywhere near our precious towns of Minneapolis or Adolphus is a terrible idea. And we've been saying the same thing that my Uncle Tom was saying. I just haven't talked to him about it. That there's no way, like I've already met several families who've chose Minneapolis, like they drove around, the husband got a job in Salina, they drove around, they chose Minneapolis and as a place to live. And that is, as people who have lived in cities for a long time, there's just no way that anyone's gonna choose a town with this kind of facility nearby. They're just not. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on like reputation matters. And because I know like there's a lot of stats and a lot on the environment, but if you want the town to like at least like remain here and potentially grow, then this is like 30 outside jobs is not worth it, losing what you could potentially get from the growth from Salina or from the people returning. That's just my 2 cents.
I'm Louise Corman, and Kathy is the one that called me for the adventure that we went on to go up there. And I just wanted to say, in their defense, even though I'm not for this, it is an immaculate facility. It looks very, very clean. And secondly, the smells did smell chemical to me. It smelled, which for me, I have a pig and we've raised pig. My pig is, I love my pig, and I worked in a taxidermist as I was growing up in high school. So I'm dealing with smell my whole life, plus being a farmer. But the smell definitely smelled like the black tank out of my camper. So it wasn't as bad as pig smells can smell. But I did smell it for about 2.25 miles when I went around another way, but it was very faint. I mean, I had to try to smell it because we didn't have any wind. But I was impressed with that. I have to give them credit, but I didn't get to smell it with a wind. So I just have to be fair on that. But what's not fair, we went around and talked to everybody around town, and just to briefly to shut this down, is that one of the ladies we talked to, I said, well, what things have you seen changes? And she went through the changes, and the one thing she said was, I said, have you seen growth in this town and revitalizing of it? And she said, no, we really haven't. And she did say that it was a really good place to work for teenagers on weekends and at nights. So I just want to tell you that there was some positives there, but the ironic negative was they had not seen any revitalization that she could see really, and she was the family that sold the land to Schwartz's.
Yeah.
We've all had farms in the area, and if you're gray, just like gray heads in here, you know that they always say it's going to reduce the property taxes, the jail, the wheat thing that made sideboard out of wheat. I mean, we can all go through a million things. Everybody's had a plan. They're going to reduce property taxes. So we know that is a wash. That is not going to happen. But I am concerned because, I've torn down 2 houses. When the KDHD and you send off your water sample and you have nitrate in your well, they are not going to help you because there is nothing to filter out nitrate from your well water. They close you down, and the only people that make money off of that was the Robins when they came and tore down the house. So you're just dead in the water if you have nitrates in your water. So how much nitrate does this factory of pigs actually put off?
Well, in Iowa, those poor people have the sad situation of knowing a lot about these things. I read an article from, I think it was 2018, so the numbers are old, but as of then, the state I think they'd been spending $66 million or something on trying to clean up the water. I feel strongly about nitrates because my husband and I, in our first house, there was a sudden spike in the nitrates in our water. We never did figure out what caused that. I mean, it just went from no nitrates up to this spike. We think it was there maybe was kind of a feedlot behind years and years before, and the nitrate had just then, decades later, finally hit the groundwater in that particular location. So we got an RO filter, but the person, what they said on the thing was the most nitrates it can filter out is 80 to 90%. And we got the highest tech, high-tech, greatest RO filter on the market. And I have looked online to see if there's been an improvement in the technology. No. The maximum you can get nitrates out with a reverse osmosis filter, which is expensive. You can't do that on a citywide basis. You can do it on a household basis. It's slow and it's expensive, and the most you can get out is 90%. Well, if you've got sky-high levels of nitrate, you're still not going to get down to below the cutoff level for safety, and it's very serious health consequences. So what happens?
You don't get a choice. They close you.
Yeah.
They charge you to cap the well, and then you have to abandon the property.
Yeah, and what happens if, say, city, our whole water supply is contaminated? Well, then Culligan gets rich, I guess. But to not be able to drink water in your own house, and to be dependent on that bottled water, I don't think that's an ideal way to think. And the thing is it's not necessary. Why do this to ourselves if we don't have to?
Do you know how much a place like this puts off?
Well, no, we won't know until it's too late. There's too many variables because the waste is spread on neighboring fields, and depending on the soil profile, the rainfall, how it's applied and when, there's so many factors, exactly which field you're on. There's too many variables. By the time you get nitrates into your aquifer, it's too late. But like I said, there's a difference between like a household septic system and concentrated that many animals' waste. You just the soil just can't absorb it. I mean, I think it's too great of a risk to take. And I will confess that I take nitrates very personally because many, many years ago, I was a research technician at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, fresh out of college with my chemistry degree. And I loved the job in a lot of ways, but the unpleasant part of my job, we were studying cancer, and we were studying specifically, as our study, we were looking at cancer in the livers of these cute little white mice. So my job was to give them cancer as quickly as I possibly could, and then we'd cut them open, I'd do surgery on them, and harvest 1 or 2 lobes of their liver, sew them back up, give them a few weeks, and then open them back up again. And at that point I had to sacrifice them, kill them. And what we used to give those little white mice cancer as quick as we possibly could was we injected them with nitrosamines. Well, nitrosamines form in your stomach from nitrite, which can form from the saliva in your mouth with nitrate. Now, obviously it doesn't give everybody cancer because, there's nitrate in green leafy vegetables, and we don't all get cancer from eating green leafy vegetables. But it's an age-dependent thing, and it's a dose-dependent thing. So if a small baby, or if you're pregnant, your unborn baby, and you have a high concentration of nitrate in your water supply, okay, the younger the child is, the more that reaction of nitrate to nitrite takes place, and the more that when the nitrite gets down to their stomach, it becomes nitrosamines. And I'm here to tell you, it's one of the most powerful carcinogens in the world. It's very effective at giving you cancer.
But I have one more question before I make my decision. So are they going to give us premium on corn around here? Because are they going to supply corn somewhere around here to feed all these little piggies?
No, the feed will be coming, and I have this from Schwartz. The feed will be coming from Valley View Mills in Seneca, Kansas. So have y'all not heard about the feed mill? Because I can explain that. It turns out, I've gotten such an education about swine, it's pretty fascinating, really. They require very special feed, and you need a specialized feed mill to provide it, and that feed mill must be used for the swine feed only and not anything else. Like, you can't have a feed mill that processes feed for cattle and also supply swine feed to Schwartz. So there was some talk, there was negotiations that went on for several months with the Delphus Co-op, and they would have either had to redo their feed mill or build a whole new one, but it would have been millions of dollars either way. And once it was built, it could not be used for anything but swine feed to Schwartz. And here's the kicker. Schwartz would not give any guarantees that they would continue to use that new Delphus feed mill as their supplier. So what happens if you invest all these millions in a feed mill because you're going to supply Schwartz, and then a couple years down the road, Schwartz says, oh, well, we found a better source. Well, that leaves all those investors hanging in the wind, doesn't it? So, no, Valley View Mills in Seneca, Kansas is already equipped to supply that feed. So there would be a couple of semis a day coming in from Seneca, Kansas to supply the feed. So I can't see any benefit to local farmers.
if you want to read any more about the difficulties of nitrates, there's a study that'll be on the internet tomorrow. They did a long-term study of nitrates in central Iowa, and all their surface water is badly contaminated with nitrates from the pork and fertilizers that have gone on the land of Iowa, and they are putting out that on the internet, the results of their study, and the state of Iowa has no idea what they're going to do about it. Almost all of their surface water is badly contaminated with nitrates.
Anybody else? Jerry, introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Ayers, and I want to tell you that, first of all, I'm a cattleman, I'm not a hog farmer. Matter of fact, I hate hogs. Brian Kendall can tell you about stories that during 4-H of the different shenanigans I would pull just to compromise the hog barn at the fairgrounds. So I am not a hog person. But what I can tell you is that I've been a physical hawk along with our esteemed president here, Rich, for the county commissioners, and the tax situation is serious. I am pleased to announce that after some heated debate this morning, that they're not going to raise, there's proposed not to raise the total available tax mills. Is going to be cut almost by two mills, the proposed of what they wanted to do. Now, as far as this subject, what I've seen is a lot of fear-mongering, that there's been no solid evidence presented, and that's what I'm after, is solid evidence to make a decision on this, that there has been air quality compromised on any of the sports farms or on water quality. There's been no evidence presented that in any of their hog farms that this has been a problem. It's all been, well, what if? It could be. I've watched this community practically die because we've turned down all kinds of industry. Now, if it's the consensus of all the citizens that all they want to do is be a bedroom community to Salina, then we'll continue to pay the taxes that we've been paying. Of the 8 counties that our CPA that does our county taxes and our budget that they oversee, we are the second highest taxing entity that he has. And I don't know about you guys, especially those that are retired, our income's not going up. And I know Leland's concerned about his land value, but land values are not fixed upon selling price. Land values are fixed on a very complicated formula coming from the state. Yes, I've been through this for 2 years with the county commissioners, and I know what it does. I wish Steve Clanton was here because he could tell you, because he served on it with the Soybean Association. Okay, no problem. So, again, I'm not going to say I'm for or against it. I will too. I'll say right now I'm for it because we need an economic boost in this community. And again, until some proof is given to me, some solid proof that there has been damage caused by a sports farm entity somewhere, then I've got to support it for economic growth.
Just a reminder that Schwartz did not open any facilities in Kansas until 2022. Okay, that's 2.5 years ago. As I was saying, sometimes it takes a long time for nitrates to work their way down to the groundwater. That's just the soil science, that's the hydrology. Do you have something to say?
Yeah. I'm Sharon Faust. I live up the street. I've lived here 30 years. And I would like to remind everyone that when they had nitrate issues along the Smoky Hill River in Dickinson County, the city of Abilene got all of their wells contaminated with it, and they had to put in reverse osmosis for the whole town that cost over $100 million. Now, this is right up the river from our town. It's going to come down. This is very concerning. And the fact that this company has not had any, we don't have any long-term effects. So those other facilities that you went to, the one in Harrington that's closed? No. Okay, the one in Longford that's closed. How long did it operate? That would be interesting to know. And why did it close?
Well, all I could find out is that this gentleman named Mr. Henry that had operated, I guess, the two previous incarnations of Henry Port, I found a news article that in 2020 he had built a brand new high-tech gleaming facility. That was the one I never found. Somebody helped me. I finally found it on satellite views, Google Maps, and it turned out it was just 1.5 miles from where I was, but I never managed to find it that day. And that new one, like I said, I have not seen that one. I know that it's not as big as the one proposed for Ottawa County. It's like 1/3 or 1/2 the size. And for whatever reason, Mr. Henry apparently sold that facility to Schwartz in 2023, and that it opened in 2024. So.
I can answer a few questions. Her question. I pull for, my name's Rodney Swank. I pull baby pigs out of Milford, Utah, and I bring them back to Iowa. The people that you're dealing with up here in Minnesota, they don't do the biotech as much as what Smithfield does. That's who I pull for, Smithfield. The Smithfield plant we got up there is the only clean plant that sows don't have the disease. The disease that is going around now, all of their sows, they'll only have like one baby, and then they'll slough all the others. They're stillborn. So your 10 pens, they fill up a whole lot faster. That's something that I don't think they have told you. All of the sow sheds around are diseased. That's why they're looking for new places to build sow sheds.
So what's creating the disease? Is it a pathogen? Is it
It's a disease that swine get, that if you, especially in confinement areas, it basically comes from the concrete, if the concrete stuff, and they'll start getting this disease, and they'll just start sloughing their babies. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Anybody else? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dusty Mullen. Great presentation. Done a lot of homework, obviously. I'm a neighbor to the Oak Hill facility, and that is, why is that there? They bought 3-generation Henry Hog Farm. They don't own the facilities anymore that are being shut down or that are vacant, and there's a cleanup process going on there. So I'm a neighbor to the facility that you couldn't find, and I just want to say, your comments dead on. I have had conversations with Tim Schwartz, good, seems like a great guy. I haven't had Thanksgiving dinner with him, but good people, good folks. And I guess that's what I'm here to share. I know there's concerns. I appreciate a lot of what ifs. I think you're dead on there in that analysis of it. And so I guess from someone from a neighboring county that's a neighbor to one of these facilities, the Schwartz, it's been a good operation. The Henrys were a good operation for, like I said, 3 generations before the Schwartz came along. And when that process started to happen, living in that neighborhood, I was obviously thinking, man, here we go from good neighbors and a good community family to something else. And folks, that hasn't been the experience at all. They continue, they support our local rodeo. I mean, there is community support there. Man, pull whatever numbers. Things are always going to be better or worse, depending on what side you're on, than what reality actually is. Things are never as bad as they seem and never as good as they seem, and somewhere in the middle lies reality. That's not my quote. Some of you may know who it comes from. But at any rate, that's my 2 cents, not here to argue facts or whatever, but I will say, as a neighbor over there, been great, and I can't smell it. No, and I will say, we're around that area, and they are. There's probably less smell now than previous, but one of the things about big that I think is legitimate. They are huge. I mean, you can argue whatever facts you want tonight, but they are huge, and this is a big facility. I would say, or at least consider, as a community, that I would way rather have somebody putting in, at various levels, everything can be taken in the right context or wrong context, but I would way rather have a facility with that kind of assets, that kind of horsepower, and the backing that they have than somebody coming in and trying to squeak out a minimum level facility. As you look at the KDHC classifications of big, large, whatever, mega is a word that scares everybody, but the opportunity for things to go wrong, as you think about that risk analysis you talked about, the opportunity for things to go wrong that can't be remedied, I believe is much greater with a smaller facility. Somebody that's over leveraged, can't swing what they need to be swinging, and can't deal with those issues. With Schwartz, they got it. It is big, and so I don't think big is necessarily the worst part of the deal. So I know lots of different opinions. I don't live in this community. You folks do. One thing that I would say, grew up in the Longford area. I hope you're all still good neighbors and friends and talking when the chips fall wherever they do here, because it is a great community. First time I've been in this facility. What a place, and so to have, it's a great community. You guys be good friends and neighbors when this thing's all said and done. But that's it. Thank you.
John Wilson, been in this community for a long time, raised my family, retired from business, and I plan on dying here, okay? I was on Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development, trying to bring business and opportunity into this community. And it's come down to the point where it seems like the only people that are interested in us are agricultural slaughterhouses, pig farms, things of this nature. So we're going to have to make a decision. And I'm not wanting to be run out of here on a rail. I'm not necessarily for this either. It's too big. But I don't think Elon Musk is going to come in here, build a facility, and bring 300 high-paid engineers and set up shop. So we're going to have to take or not take what we want. Kathy had a great presentation, and she talked about risk and return. Has anybody put a pencil to what kind of money our county is going to receive for such a facility? That's, to me, is very interesting. If we are only going to get $250 from this facility in taxes, then shut the door and turn out the lights. But if we're talking millions of dollars of tax revenue, then it's something we need to consider. But I don't know. But I'd like to have somebody put a pencil to that. Has anybody ever decided what kind of facility, how much money that would bring into the county?
I talked to Truett McQueen, and he was very helpful. I said, can you give an estimate of what the valuation would be? He said, I can only get a valuation on a building that is sitting there. You cannot do a valuation on a hypothetical building that's not physically there. So all these things are guesses because, in between, prices of materials can change, markets can change, all that kinds of things can change. So he explained to me, maybe you guys probably already know all this, but I didn't know that everything inside that building is exempt. So all of the equipment and everything that it takes to run one of these operations, that's all exempt. It's just the physical structure itself, the building, the outside shell. That is what gets assessed. And Bruce Labus did he looked around at some other counties, other similar facilities, blah, blah, blah. He crunched some numbers and he came up with some guesses, educated guesses. And you can find those on our Facebook page, but nobody really knows. I've heard orders of magnitude different figures for what it would be. But best guess, I don't know, Bruce seemed to think that it might bring in, when he crunched all the numbers, and see, there's too many, I don't even want to share that, because I think there's just too many variables. It would be an interesting question to ask the county commissioners, because I'm
do not know or have not come up with any kind of an estimate.
Well, yeah, and I understand that too, because what is Schwartz going to say? Going to give some number that, well, I don't know. It seems like they could give an estimate, but...
Well, to me, that should be public information. Go to some place with a similar facility. What is it appraised at? How did it help the mill levy of that county? That shouldn't be a great mystery, but it seems to kind of be. That's one of the big questions in my mind. How much money would we actually get from such a facility as a county?
I'll explain to you something.
I bet hardly anybody in here has ever raised hogs, have you? But let me tell you something. A hog building is used only for raising hogs. You can't do anything else with it. And when I had them hog buildings, the appraiser said, well, they're worth X number of dollars. Says, put them into something else in. You can't do it. So they're only worth so many dollars, and that's it. It's not like a building out here, a machine shed or something like that. It's not like it. Why'd the Henrys go out? Third generation. The doctor, why would he want to run the thing? The brother, he ran it for years and years and years. Hell, he's getting old. Why did we get out of the hog business? Because it cost me $1,000 every time I took a load of hogs to Lincoln to put on the semi to get shipped to Farmland Industries every week. You ain't going to do that very damn many times. You're going to get out. And when I got out in '96, there was 140,000 hog farmers got out because we could not compete with the corporations. But this is what it is. It's the corporations. If you're going to have any hogs anymore, it's going to be the corporations. No individuals. The last individuals in Ottawa County was the Sarna boys down there, and they didn't raise very many hogs, and they farrow them on the outside twice a year. Speaking of that, your figures are wrong on that twice a year. It's more like 3 times a year, 2.5 to 3 times for farrowing. But you guys can do whatever you want, but it looks to me like it's a corporation that's been around and has done things, and it's not like what we had out here at the plant that wanted to go in for grass-fed beef. Didn't know a damn thing about it. And that's all I got to say about it. I think it might be all right. 140,000 in '96. The biggest thing you guys all are concerned about is the smell. It ain't the nitrates in the ground. That can go down from fertilizer, putting too much fertilizer on. But it's the big thing is the smell you're talking here is what you're concerned about.
What he's sitting there talking about is the housing and the smell and all that. This place that I pull out of in Milford, Utah, they have 500 hog sheds, and you can't smell them. But Smithfield, they make their EPA. You're talking about the clay deals, they all have rubber. It's a it's different companies or different places. And these 500 sheds are all within, I'm going to say, a 3-mile radius. And yes, their taxes are way down. Hey, go ahead.
Don't hold me to this, but Sunday at a meeting I was attending to, and I won't tell you who it was, I can just say call your commissioners, but to answer John's question, they indicated that it had $254 million to our tax rolls and would be 5% income, 5% total income of the budget, which is $12 million.
No, she said 25 million. I heard her say it. I was at that meeting. She said 25 million. I asked her, where did you get that number? She said, somebody at church told me. And I called Truett McQueen, or let's see, who did I call? I've made so many calls the last 6 weeks, but I called somebody, and when I said 25 million, they just laughed at me. They said, there's no way, 25 million. So I wonder about that number. See, that's the problem with the secrecy over this whole thing. When you don't have transparency, all kinds of wild rumors get started and all kinds of numbers get thrown around because we don't know. And a lot of the people I've talked to about this issue, I don't see a whole lot of them here tonight, but many people, their whole problem with this thing has been the lack of transparency. They said, okay, wait a minute, these people came in, they were making private negotiations, and the first thing we ever saw in the newspaper was on June 12th. And that's because Cassie's husband, John, wrote a letter to the editor complaining about the lack of transparency. That finally prodded somebody into say, but I don't know if you read that article, it was a puff piece. It was probably written by somebody in the Schwartz PR department. I used to do public relations for things, so I recognize that stuff when I see it. I don't think it's good for something so important to be spread by word of mouth, to not be, Schwartz, sometimes these companies, they'll come to town and they'll have a public forum themselves because they want to promote their thing and inform people about it. We've had nothing like that from Schwartz. This is the first forum of any sort there has been on this issue. We had to do it ourselves because Schwartz has not been forthcoming. And I don't doubt, I appreciated what Leland said, and that's what I've heard from other people too. These are nice folks. But I don't like this company. I'm not impugning individuals in that company, but a lot of times I mean, yeah, a big company has more resources, like you were saying. They probably keep things cleaner than the old-fashioned things. But the big companies, the further removed a corporation is from us, and the bigger it is, the less it cares about us and the less accountable it is. And the lack of transparency rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
Were they invited to this evening?
It was public. We've put flyers all over the place. We've put ads in the paper.
Was the Schwartz organization invited?
We put ads in the newspaper. We paid for ads in the newspaper. Two big ads, 3-column wide, 9 inches deep. We paid for ads in the newspaper. We've blasted it out on Facebook. I mean, we've publicized it every way we know how.
Schwartz were not publicly invited, if anyone was wondering.
Everybody's invited.
Do you
want to go give him the mic? Why don't you let him talk first? Go ahead. No, let him talk. Oh. Wait. Who was it that needed a mic? Somebody wanted a mic?
Sure.
Well, somebody was talking over here and...
All right, so my name is Colby Nichols. I'm representing myself, grew up in Ottawa County my whole life. I'm not here to talk about Schwartz, but yeah, I get it. It's a public meeting, but if you wanted them to speak, like I never got anything to speak about it. They could have easily been asked to speak. Yes, I know public meeting, they could have came. They're also 8 hours away. They have multiple other facilities. This isn't their meeting. Their meeting is on the 9th along with the state, but the state's leading. A few of the questions I've had was, it was actually in the paper in March with their proposed agreements on the messenger for their proposed approval. Yeah, so it was in the paper. And then it's also, everyone's mad about, this has been pretty quiet. It's private business on private land with private transactions. Sorry, county doesn't need to make every single decision that comes in. And also a personal question for you, Kathy, with all the phone calls you made in the last 6-7 weeks, why have you not personally called Schwartz and talked to them?
I called you.
I'm not Schwartz. I'm Colby Nichols.
But don't you work for them?
Yep, but I don't have all the answers.
But you've been very generous in providing information, though, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been called a low-skill labor from people in town for what this facility will bring in, so. No, I'm just saying what I've
heard nothing but good things about you, Colby, and I appreciate the information because I learned a lot.
I know. I appreciate it too, but I'm just wondering why you didn't call Tim personally as well during all your findings on everything.
Well, this is a Minneapolis community forum. They're not here. I mean, this is for our community. And it was an informational meeting, not a debate. This is to provide information that has not been out there, easily available to people. Most of it comes
All the
from
information's on the KDHU website.
Yeah, from the Schwartz permit. So I think Schwartz has had a voice here in terms of that's where we got all the numbers, was from the permit application.
Exactly. So, yep.
But I just want to, Colby, thank you. I called Colby several weeks ago, or actually you called me because, your mom said that I wanted to get in touch with you. And he gave me an education, like the whole farrowing thing, the 2 litters a year, the 13 to 14 piglets a litter. I got all that from Colby, and how the feed works, why they need the special feed, the biosecurity at the plants so they don't have pathogens coming in. So I appreciate that, Colby. And this is the first time we've met, but I'm glad to finally meet you in person. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you, especially people that piped up and took the mic and gave some comments. Go to our Facebook page, and we can continue the conversations. It's a beautiful evening outside. We can continue the conversations outside.